Robert Gibbs is one of President Barack Obama's dearest friends and closest advisors. He served as the president's first White House press secretary, and with the 2012 presidential election just less than a year away, he recently came to American University to talk about the president's chances in the upcoming elections and to handicap the 2012 Republican candidates. He also talked about the 2008 historic campaign and about the president's job performance thus far. Here's my exclusive interview with Mr. Gibbs. Now we're joined by Robert Gibbs, who last time was here was for the historic endorsement by the Kennedy family of Barack Obama. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Can you just briefly talk about what that was like? It was a game changer for sure. It was during the primary, a highly contested race with then Senator Hillary Clinton. Can you just talk about what that moment was like?
You know, we had just come off a very big win in South Carolina at a time in which I think in many ways the race could have gone either way. We needed a win in South Carolina. We'd won in Iowa, we'd lost in New Hampshire, we'd lost a very close race in Nevada, and South Carolina was tough. And I remember being backstage before Barack Obama went out to talk in South Carolina, and we knew that Caroline Kennedy was going to endorse Barack in the Sunday New York Times, and we were reading it on our Blackberries, and it was hard not to get choked up because it talked about the legacy of the Kennedy family and the Kennedy brothers, and to be in this arena and to hear the excitement when Ted Kennedy really gets going, or really got going, was a real thrill. And I remember thinking, this is a really big deal. This has a lot of potential. And we traveled with him for several weeks after that. And you know, you just go to these places. I remember standing in an arena not unlike Bender in Hartford, Connecticut. And he stood up after being introduced, and he just sort of stood up and he put his hands out, and you know, people were he was receiving that applause, and it's hard not to think back at that and just really think about how amazing it was, and as you said, how much it probably changed the equation.
What have you been up to since leaving the White House? Do you miss it?
I have mostly been a father to my 8-year-old. I go to baseball practice and soccer practice, and I meet the bus when it comes home. You know, there are days in which you miss a lot of it, and then there are a lot of days where you don't miss any of it because you know, it grinds you down, it wears you out. It's a remarkable once-in-a-lifetime thing. I'm fortunate always to have had the experience. It's truly unique, and I think we were there at a fascinating time in our country's history.
And you mentioned your 8-year-old son. What toll did this job, which is a 24-hour job, you're always on the clock, take on a young family?
It's very, very tough. It is. When I told my son I was leaving, he gave me a huge hug. I think he was. Look, he loved going, and he still loves going to the White House. He loves the M&Ms, and he loves seeing his friend, the president. But he doesn't miss it all that much.
What was it like? You said that you were press secretary during a unique period. President Obama did something unique, which was tap into social media, what no candidate had done before. You're the first press secretary to have a Twitter account. Yeah. What were going into the job? What were your goals dealing with the 24-hour news media and social media?
Well, I think what was interesting I think in many ways, and I'm going to talk about this some tonight, I do think that when we came in, we were trying to communicate in an era and an environment in which the media was going through a lot of change itself. You know, the number of people in our country that now get their news from the 6:30 national newscast has never been lower. But at the same time, there's never been more information available to people. So there's there are huge, huge challenges in trying to convey what you want the people to understand the president's working on every day. Because the truth is, they now have so many different channels to do it, but so few people are sitting down and turning on their television and sitting there and watching a TV. As you said, there 65 million of us are walking around with a smartphone, and we get our information from there. Younger adults are getting their information, again, not from a box, but from their social network. And it is, again, I think it is a great thing for this country that there's so much information that's available. I think it is tough on a communicator to try to be omnipresent in a world with so many different choices.
Before joining then Senator Barack Obama as communications director, you worked for Senator John Kerry in the 2004 presidential election. Having worked in two presidential elections for two different candidates, what would you say Obama had that Kerry didn't, that propelled him to a victory?
I will look.
You did leave the campaign. You did leave Kerry's campaign early. You did resign early.
And look, I've got a great relationship with Senator Kerry, and I think Senator Kerry would have been obviously a better president than George Bush. I thought that when I went to work for him. I thought that when I left, because I think there were obviously a number of problems that Barack Obama didn't get a chance to get around to trying to solve until after 4 more years. Look, I think in many ways there are tons of things that were similar but also different. We were in a different political time, and I think in a lot of ways the country had serious fatigue after 8 years of the Bush White House, and they wanted something different in a real palpable way. And you know, in 2004 we were in a unique period of time, because essentially George Bush was asking to stay the course because of what had happened around September 11th, and that it was risky to change presidents in a changing world. And I think by the time we got to 2008, people really significantly wanted a big change, and that's one of the reasons that brought about Barack Obama.
All right, and on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Much more, Robert Gibbs, when we return. Welcome back to a special broadcast. We're joined by former Press Secretary to President Barack Obama, Robert Gibbs. Mr. Gibbs, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The number one issue in America right now is the economy. Economy. In a CBS News poll released last week, 52% of Americans do not think President Obama has spent enough time dealing with the economy. And a majority say his economic policies have not had an impact on them personally or on the economy generally. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that you do believe that the president has spent time on the economy. Why isn't there a connection there?
I think it all is. I think all of these polls, the direction of the economy, the direction of the country, the president's standing, are all measured in the fact that people are. I think people are really hurting in this country, and they have been for a long time. I think the way the media tends to cover the economic downturn is they think that this started when a bank collapsed on Wall Street in 2008. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this tonight, but you know, I think that we are in a period of, we're almost at the end of, let's hope, I think we're at the end of a several decade decline in middle class security. The census figures that came out last week, which showed an increase in the number of people that live in poverty, particularly children, an increase in the number of those that are uninsured and don't have health insurance. But probably as stunning as any is the median household's income in real terms in 2010 was equal to what it was 14 years ago in 1996. Now, your parents would love to get the bill from American University with 1996 prices, right? But they're paying 2010 prices with a 1996 with a 1996 income. And that's true for college and food and gas and clothing and just about everything else. And I think people are feeling more anxiety and more squeeze than they ever have been. And I think that's in large part what 2012 is going to be about is which path are we going to pick to solve not just a short-term problem, but a long-term decline in our middle-class security?
What can be done about that, and what has the president done or is going to do to change that, to reverse that course?
Yeah. The first thing that people have to understand is it's not going to happen quickly, and it's certainly not going to happen overnight because we didn't get there overnight. We have to do a lot of things. We have to make a serious, renewed investment in things like education, in building roads and bridges. And I don't mean just building roads and bridges or airports or high-speed trains just to build them. I mean because if we don't build them, we're not going to be the first-class economy that we are right now. The Chinese will build them. Somebody else will build them. And so we need to invest in our people. We need to invest in our infrastructure. We need to look for and create the high-wage, high-skilled jobs of tomorrow. You know, if you don't get out of college these days, you're way behind the eight ball. And, 20 years ago, if you didn't get out of college, you could go to work in a textile mill or a manufacturing plant. And most of those jobs are gone. And quite honestly, they're not coming back. So we've got to compete for the future right now.
But even those with college degrees are having difficulties finding jobs.
Absolutely. No, look, this I think will be, when we all look back on this 20 years from now, I think we'll see that this is as bad an economic time period as has ever been existed in our country's history. And hopefully we will look back and say that's the worst we've ever had because things started.
Much more with my exclusive interview with former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs right after these messages, so make sure you don't go anywhere. We now return to the conclusion of my interview with former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs as he addresses the critics of the Obama administration directly. So a new book is going to be released in the coming week. I bet you've heard a lot about it, and you're glad that you're not in the White House as press secretary now. Confident Men, Wall Street, Washington, and the Education of a President by journalist Ron Sutkin. He was given access to the White House, even given an interview with the president. Yeah. The Washington Post was given an early copy, and according to their articles, it isn't a flattering picture of the Obama administration.
Flattering pictures don't usually sell books. That's probably why.
His criticism went to the economic team.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? And were you interviewed by him?
I talked to Ron once. I will say this, and I think if you were to see some of the interview with the president, Ron Suskind doesn't interview you. You listen to Ron Suskind talk and answer a few of his questions. Look, I lived through those days in the White House. The number of problems that were coming at us at light speed multiplied each day. The president and his team worked well together, made some tough decisions, and made a lot of very good decisions. I don't recognize in this book the White House that I worked in. And I think there are a lot of better fiction books on the market to read.
So then why give him access if you weren't necessarily, if you believed his work wasn't in such high esteem or accurate?
I just don't, look, you never know exactly what somebody's going to come away with. I don't think that, again, I think the bottom line is the White House I worked in, the president that I saw, the team around the president that I saw, isn't the one I know that's depicted in this book. And, I think we get involved in the sensational, and we want some great stories that have villains and good guys and bad guys and what have you, and sell books. And it's just not, to me, it's just not that indicative of the place I worked in.
All right. Mr. Gibbs, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And that is it for another edition of ATV's Special Broadcast. Join us next time. Good night.